Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on, well, really an extraordinary journey. We're delving into a work that has profoundly shaped Western thought for, well over a millennium, St. Augustine's
It
Confessions.
really is monumental.
It is. And this isn't merely, an ancient autobiography or some dry theological treatise. It's the raw, often agonizing, and deeply human story of this brilliant, restless soul. His relentless, lifelong search for truth, for meaning, and ultimately for peace.
Hmm.
Our mission in this deep dive is to try and extract the most potent, maybe even surprising insights from the excerpts we have. We want to guide you through the intricate pathways of Augustine's profound journey
Yeah.
and reveal why his ancient struggles still mirror our own, perhaps in ways we don't immediately recognize even today.
What's truly fascinating about Confessions, I think, is its enduring power. It just transcends its historical context, doesn't it? It becomes this profoundly personal narrative that speaks to a universal human experience.
Absolutely.
Augustine doesn't just chronicle events. He, lays bare the very fabric of his inner world. It's challenging us, really, to look inward and consider the fundamental nature of our own desires, the objects of our affections, and where we genuinely seek lasting fulfillment.
Right.
So we won't just recount what Augustine went through, but we'll explore why his transparent self-analysis continues to resonate so powerfully with people across millennia. It offers this powerful and sometimes, uncomfortable lens through which to examine our own lives, our motivations, and those deep-seated yearnings that drive us.
Okay, let's unpack one of the most iconic opening lines in literary history. It's a statement from Augustine that has just echoed through centuries, resonated with countless readers. "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they rest in you."
It's powerful.
It really is. And this isn't just, a poetic flourish or a simple theological declaration. It's the very heartbeat, the pulsating core of the entire book. It sets the stage for his lifelong quest for something transcendent.
It absolutely does.
It encapsulates this core idea that there's a fundamental intrinsic longing within humanity, a deep-seated desire, maybe an innate orientation towards something beyond the material world. That earthly pursuits, no matter how grand or fulfilling they seem, can never truly satisfy.
You've really hit upon the essential Augustinian premise there. Stepping back, what this tells us about the human condition is, Augustine posits this fundamental, almost architectural void within us.
A void, yeah.
That no external achievement, no fleeting pleasure, no amount of material wealth, or even the most profound intellectual knowledge can genuinely or lastingly fill. He's arguing that this inherent restlessness isn't some kind of design flaw, but rather an innate homing device, an internal compass perpetually pointing us towards something ultimate, something truly transcendent.
That's a great way to put it, a homing device.
Yeah. And this prompts a crucial question for us in our, let's face it, hyper-connected, often superficial modern world. In an era overflowing with distractions, immediate gratification right at our fingertips, endless choices for entertainment, how often do we still experience this deep, persistent, almost unshakable emptiness?
It's a good question.
Even with unprecedented access to information, travel, comforts, the underlying human experience of seeking something more, something profoundly and eternally fulfilling, it just persists, doesn't it?
It seems to.
Augustine's opening line, penned so long ago, serves as this timeless, almost clinical diagnosis of the human condition. It points to a hunger that just cannot be sated by anything within the created order.
And Augustine wasn't just theorizing about this restlessness, was he? He absolutely lived it.
Oh, completely.
He openly shares the, excruciating details of his early life, vividly recounting how he chased joy and fulfillment in everything the world offered. He describes immersing himself in intense, passionate love affairs, indulging in wild, hedonistic nights with friends, and pursuing ambitious rhetoric. The art of persuasive speaking, which was the fast track to fame and power back then.
Right, that was his career path initially.
Exactly. He was brilliant, ambitious, utterly consumed by these worldly pursuits. He famously wrote, "I was in love with love," which just vividly captures his youthful idealism, his passionate nature, his intense emotional landscape.
Such a great line.
Isn't it? Yet, despite all these fervent pursuits, the fleeting thrills of romance, the intellectual buzz of debate, the rush of professional success, he found that nothing truly definitively filled that profound void he'd described.
Right.
Each experience, no matter how intense or seemingly fulfilling in the moment, just left him with this aching sense of incompleteness. It prompted him to move on, always hoping the next thing, the next achievement, the next relationship would finally be the answer.
It's a familiar pattern, that relentless seeking, like a treadmill of desire.
Yeah, treadmill. I think many of us can recognize that feeling.
That's a crucial pattern Augustine highlights, and it's immensely relatable even today. That relentless pursuit of temporary gratification as a way to quiet some deep-seated internal disquiet.
Trying to fill the void externally.
Exactly. It's a common human tendency, isn't it? Seeking external solutions for internal emptiness, whether it's through relationships, career, possessions, constant entertainment, even, chasing likes online. What Augustine discovered, and what countless individuals still grapple with, is that these fleeting experiences, while maybe momentarily thrilling or distracting, ultimately fail to provide lasting peace or genuine meaning.
They just don't stick.
No. His early life, recounted with such unflinching honesty, serves as this profound illustration of the futility of seeking infinite satisfaction from finite sources. It underscores that ancient idea that, some hungers just cannot be satisfied by worldly bread alone. He shows us the deep dissatisfaction that inevitably follows when we try to quench an ultimate thirst with, finite sips.
Okay, but here's where it gets truly unsettling, I think, and maybe a bit uncomfortable for us to confront, because it reveals this darker, more irrational side of human nature that Augustine just courageously dives into.
The pear story.
Exactly. He recounts this famous story from his youth where he and his friends stole pears from a neighbor's tree. Now, the key thing is, it wasn't because they were hungry or needed them. He explicitly says they had better pears at home.
Right. That's the crucial detail.
No, they stole them purely for the thrill of doing something wrong, for the sheer wantonness of the act itself. He reflects on this years later and chillingly writes, "I loved my own ruin."
Wow. Loved my own ruin.
Yeah. It wasn't about the pears at all. It was about the transgression, the perverse satisfaction derived from breaking rules and causing mischief just for its own sake. It was an act of defiance, a moment where the very act of doing wrong was the reward.
This isn't just youthful transgression, is it? Or simple naughtiness. It's a profound psychological insight into the nature of sin and the darker impulses of the human will.
Definitely deeper than just stealing fruit.
Right. Augustine isn't just listing his misdeeds here. He's undertaking this radical, almost psychoanalytic dissection of the motives behind them. This love of ruin isn't just about simple mischief. It's an early, startling glimpse into what modern psychology might call, self-sabotage or perverse pleasure.
Yeah.
That inexplicable human drive to do what is wrong, even when it offers no tangible benefit, and in fact brings internal dissonance or guilt. He's articulating a concept centuries before Freud, showing human nature's capacity for defiance even against its own well-being.
It's quite profound.
It really raises a critical question for us. What does it tell us about human nature when we find a perverse satisfaction in rebellion, even when it's destructive to ourselves or others? It suggests a deeper spiritual or existential rebellion, maybe a desire to assert one's own will above all else to prove one's autonomy, even if it leads to self-harm or profound internal dissonance. It's a powerful exploration of the darker, more irrational side of human freedom. It reveals this deep-seated impulse to defy, perhaps even to defy one's own well-being, in an attempt to prove self-sufficiency.
What's truly a mark of Augustine's genius, I think, isn't just his ability to recount his misdeeds, but his rigorous commitment to analyzing them with incredible depth.
Yes, the analysis is key.
He doesn't just list his sins and failures, he questions them, meticulously dissecting their origins, their psychological underpinnings, their effects on his soul. Why did he do what he did? What was it that made him feel both incredibly free in his choices, that unbridled ability to choose his own path, pursue any pleasure,
Right.
and yet, paradoxically, utterly enslaved by his desires, unable to break free from habits and temptations that he intellectually knew were not good for him, that were, in fact, undermining his own peace and integrity.
That contradiction is central.
This profound internal contradiction, this feeling of being both master and slave to himself, it's a central agonizing theme in his relentless self-examination.
This is where Augustine truly shines, I think, delving into the profound paradox of human will and the very nature of freedom itself. He's wrestling with freedom, not merely as, the ability to make choices, but as the capacity for true self-governance.
Self-governance. That's interesting.
Yeah, the ability to choose what is genuinely good, what aligns with one's highest ideals, and to effectively align one's desires with that ideal. His exploration of this inner war between intellect and passion, between his aspiration for virtue and his susceptibility to vice, is incredibly sophisticated for its time.
Way ahead of its time, really.
Absolutely. It anticipates so much later psychological and philosophical thought on the fragmented self, the divided will, the immense challenges of self-mastery. He brilliantly articulates how one can intellectually assent to what is right, what is rational, yet find oneself repeatedly drawn to destructive patterns due to ingrained habits, powerful emotional impulses, sheer weakness of will.
We've all been there, I suspect.
Exactly. As a foundational text for understanding that perennial human struggle between knowing the good and doing the bad.
And the most famous, maybe the most relatable articulation of this internal struggle comes in that incredibly honest, almost painfully human line, "Lord, give me chastity, but not yet."
That line. It just hits you, doesn't it?
It really does. That sentence alone, those few words, vividly reveal the intense tug-of-war in his heart with such raw, disarming honesty. It's a vivid snapshot of the brutal battle between desire and discipline,
Yeah.
between the urge to surrender to a higher, more virtuous calling and the lingering, almost desperate attachment to sin and worldly pleasures. It's not just a clever phrase or some moment of irony. It's a profound confession of a deeply divided self.
Utterly relatable.
So relatable to anyone who has ever struggled with a strong habit, an addiction, or even just a bad routine they knew was harmful but found incredibly difficult to let go of. It's raw, it's uncomfortable, and it's deeply human. It just captures the essence of procrastination when faced with what we know is right.
That's a truly powerful observation. Because the sheer honesty of that but not yet prayer is precisely what makes it so impactful. It's not, as you say, a hypocritical statement uttered with malicious intent. It's a genuine articulation of a deeply divided will.
Right, he means it.
He means it. It shows a mind that understands the ideal of a purified life, a higher calling, but a body, or rather, a deeply ingrained set of habits and desires that is just not yet ready to fully commit to that transformation.
It's a kind of cognitive dissonance, isn't it? A knowing that's disconnected from doing.
Yeah.
This prompts an important question. How often do we, too, find ourselves caught in a similar tension? Knowing what we should do, what aligns with our higher values or long-term goals, but struggling fiercely to relinquish what we want to do in the immediate moment.
All the time, probably. This internal dialogue, this push and pull, it just underscores the deep challenge of genuine transformation. It's not simply a matter of intellectual assent, of agreeing with a principle. It's a profound reordering of one's entire being, a struggle that touches the very core of human freedom and self-control. It highlights how deeply ingrained habits can truly enslave the will.
For years, Augustine, being the brilliant rhetorician and intellectual he was, he tried to think his way out of this existential void. He truly believed that through rigorous study, logical argument, philosophical inquiry, he could arrive at a truth that would finally bring him peace and resolution.
Using the tools he knew best.
Exactly. He systematically explored various philosophies, delving deep into their tenets. For a significant period, he meticulously followed the Manichaeans.
Right, that dualistic group.
Yeah, a religious movement that offered this seemingly rational explanation for the problem of evil, the idea that good and evil were two co-eternal warring principles, which, provided a convenient way for Augustine to kind of externalize his own struggles.
It let him off the hook in a way.
A little bit. He was drawn to their clear, logical framework, which contrasted sharply with what he initially saw as the, maybe, simplistic narratives of Christianity. And when that didn't provide a lasting solution, he even toyed with academic skepticism, sort of resigning himself to the belief that maybe absolute, objective truth couldn't be found at all, just suspend judgment.
The ultimate intellectual shrug.
Right. But the source tells us, despite all this formidable intellectual effort and exploration, nothing lasted. Each system, each philosophy, no matter how intellectually appealing at first, ultimately left him wanting. It failed to provide the deep, abiding certainty, moral clarity, and existential peace he so desperately craved.
This segment powerfully highlights the limitations, doesn't it, of purely intellectual or logical approaches to these profound existential and spiritual questions.
They only go so far.
It's exactly. Augustine systematically explored the leading philosophies and belief systems of his day, applying his formidable intellect to each. He wrestled with the Manichaeans, found their inconsistencies. Then he turned to the Neoplatonists, who actually helped him conceptualize God and spiritual realities in a non-material way. That was a big step.
Yeah, that was important.
It liberated him from overly literal, anthropomorphic ideas. Yet even they, for him, proved ultimately insufficient in providing that lasting sense of peace, moral clarity, or certainty about good, evil, and ultimate truth. It suggests that some truths, particularly those related to meaning, purpose, spiritual fulfillment, may just transcend intellectual grasp alone.
Need something more.
They might require a different kind of engagement, one that involves the heart and the will, not just the mind. His intellectual journey, though rigorous and necessary, ultimately led him to a dead end. It demonstrated that while reason is vital, it may not be the sole or ultimate path to profound internal resolution. He needed more than abstract ideas. He needed a solution for his own moral failings and that divided will.
It wasn't until he encountered Bishop Ambrose, a prominent and highly respected figure in Milan, that his mind began to shift in a truly significant way. This was a crucial turning point.
Absolutely pivotal.
And this wasn't just another intellectual debate for Augustine, who, let's remember, was used to winning arguments. Ambrose was different. He was a man who spoke with both brilliant intelligence and a profound, living, coherent faith.
The whole package.
Right. Augustine initially went to hear Ambrose simply to critique his rhetorical style, analyze his delivery as a master rhetorician himself. But he found himself drawn in, almost against his will, by the content of Ambrose's sermons.
The substance got him.
Exactly. Something deeper was at play than mere academic discourse. Ambrose presented Christianity not as some crude, unsophisticated belief system for the uneducated, which was maybe Augustine's prejudice.
A common prejudice at the time among intellectuals.
Right. But as a rich, intellectually robust tradition that could engage with philosophical questions at the highest level. And crucially, it offered a coherent answer to the problem of evil and the nature of God that Augustine had wrestled with for so long. Ambrose showed Augustine how to interpret Scripture allegorically, opening up new ways of understanding.
That interaction with Ambrose is absolutely crucial. It marks a decisive pivot. And it wasn't just the content of Ambrose's words, although that was significant. It was perhaps the integrated wisdom of his life, the tangible congruence between what Ambrose preached and how he lived, the spiritual authority that came from genuine conviction.
It wasn't just talk.
No. It serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes genuine understanding and transformative insight come not just from data or logical argument, but from encountering individuals whose lives authentically embody the truths they speak.
That makes sense.
Ambrose offered Augustine a coherent, intellectual framework for Christianity that resonated with his philosophical training, particularly through that Neoplatonic lens he'd been exploring. But more importantly, he presented a living faith that seemed to address the very existential void and moral dilemma Augustine had experienced. It was the unique combination of robust intellect and profound spiritual conviction that made Ambrose uniquely impactful on Augustine's journey. He saw a man who had found the rest he himself so desperately craved.
So while Augustine was wrestling with his intellect, his desires, caught in this profound, agonizing internal war, someone else was diligently, persistently, and with just unwavering love working in the background. His mother, Monica.
Monica is such a key figure.
For years, indeed for decades, she begged God to rescue her brilliant but wayward son from his wandering ways and bring him to faith. Our source tells us, with poignant simplicity, her faith never gave up, and neither did her tears. She was an embodiment of persistent, unwavering prayer, carrying her son's spiritual journey as her own profound burden. Despite his repeated disappointments, his intellectual arrogance, his many detours, imagine the frustration, the heartbreak of a mother watching her beloved son drift further and further from the path she believed was true, yet never losing hope.
What's truly fascinating here is the profound, almost tangible impact of that persistent, unwavering love and faith, even when the subject Augustine seemed so far from redemption.
Yeah, he seemed pretty lost for a while.
Monica's story provides this powerful and beautiful counterpoint to Augustine's intellectual struggles. It suggests that transformation isn't solely an individual endeavor achieved through rational argument or personal willpower alone.
It's not all on us.
Right. It highlights that profound, deeply personal change can be profoundly influenced by the steadfast support, the intercession, the spiritual dedication of others. Her enduring hope, often expressed through tears and fervent prayers, created this kind of spiritual atmosphere around Augustine, a fertile ground for change, even when he himself was resistant and rebellious.
That's a lovely image, a fertile ground.
It underscores the incredible, almost unquantifiable power of unconditional love and sustained spiritual commitment in another person's life. It shows that sometimes the seeds of transformation are sown long, long before they germinate.
Eventually, the overwhelming accumulation of his intellectual struggles, his mother's relentless, tearful prayers, and the profound influence of Bishop Ambrose, it all converged.
The tipping point.
Exactly. It culminated in this singular, quiet garden moment in Milan, a deeply personal and private crisis where Augustine finally, irrevocably, just broke. He was utterly exhausted, worn down by decades of searching, intellectual dead ends, self-deception.
At the end of his rope.
Completely. Overwhelmed by his internal conflict, the unbearable weight of his unfulfilled longings, he fled from his friend Alypius, seeking solitude. And then he heard a child's voice, from a neighboring house, chanting what sounded like a simple game. Tolle, doodle, tolle, lele.
Take and read, take and
read.
take and read.
It was a simple phrase, seemingly innocuous, yet it struck him with overwhelming divine force, as if it were a direct personal command from God himself. This wasn't a philosophical argument, it was a pure, unadulterated spiritual breakthrough.
This moment is, honestly, without exaggeration, often cited as one of the most significant conversions in Western thought. Not just for its monumental impact on Augustine's life and his subsequent legacy, but for its profound illustration of how such a decisive spiritual shift can occur.
It's so dramatic.
It is. And it wasn't a philosophical argument that swayed him in that exact moment, was it? Nor was it some grand revelation of new doctrine. It was a direct, almost mystical prompt that seemed to bypass his intellectual defenses and speak directly to his deepest soul, to his will, which had been so divided for so long.
Right to the core.
Which prompts an important question for us. What conditions that unique alignment of internal readiness, years of external influences, profound emotional and intellectual exhaustion, and perhaps, as Augustine believed, divine intervention, what has to align for such a profound and sudden shift to occur in a person's life? It suggests a readiness for change that transcends purely rational decision-making. A moment when the will, previously fragmented and rebellious, finally aligns itself with an ultimate truth it has sought, perhaps unknowingly, for so long. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes clarity arrives not through arduous intellectual assent, but through a moment of profound internal surrender and receptivity.
Immediately following that voice, Augustine, still trembling, he returned to where his friend Alypius sat. He picked up a copy of Paul's epistles that was lying nearby, opened it randomly, and his eyes fell upon a specific passage. Romans 13:13 to 14.
The specific words mattered hugely here.
They really did. This passage reads, and I'll quote it directly, "Let us walk properly as in the daytime, not in orgies and drunkenness, not in sexual immorality and sensuality, not in quarreling and jealousy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires."
Wow, talk about direct.
Right, and the impact, he states, was immediate and absolute. The words struck him with an astonishing, almost surgical directness, as if they were written specifically for him at that very moment, addressing the exact internal battles he'd been fighting. The passage spoke directly to his struggles with sensuality, his intellectual pride, his fragmented will.
This wasn't just any random passage, was it? It directly addressed the very war within that Augustine had been experiencing his entire adult life, the struggle with sensuality, pleasure-seeking, intellectual pride, the torment of his divided will.
It was tailor-made.
It was as if the precise words he needed to hear in that specific moment of profound internal crisis and utter desperation were delivered to him with pinpoint accuracy. And the call to put on the Lord Jesus Christ, that offered a positive, transformative alternative, didn't it? Not just resisting temptation, but providing a new identity and power beyond his own struggling willpower.
A new way forward.
Exactly. Connect this to the broader picture. It highlights the immense, almost catalytic power that specific messages encountered at exactly the right time and in the right internal state can have in initiating or completing a transformative process.
Yeah.
It wasn't abstract theology. It was a practical, direct call to abandon the very desires that had tormented him and to embrace a new way of being, a new source of identity and strength. This encounter was the catalyst that brought his intellectual and emotional struggles to a decisive, immediate, and permanent resolution. All his prior seeking culminated right there.
He later wrote of this garden moment with just profound relief and wonder. It was as if a light of certainty flooded my heart and all the shadows of doubt were swept away.
Beautifully put.
Isn't it? The intellectual torment, the emotional anguish, the decades of searching, the internal civil war all dissipated in that instant, replaced by an unshakable clarity and a deep, profound peace he had never before experienced.
A complete paradigm shift.
A complete and instantaneous paradigm shift, a total reorientation of his inner compass. soon after he was baptized, formally embracing the Christian faith that had finally offered him solace, meaning, and ultimate truth. The restless heart, which had sought fulfillment in so many worldly pursuits and so many intellectual systems, had finally found its true home.
This describes a complete and instantaneous reordering of his entire internal landscape. The intellectual and emotional torment he had endured for years just dissolved, replaced by an unshakable conviction and a deep, enduring sense of peace.
The rest he was looking for.
Exactly. It suggests that the rest he finally found was not merely an intellectual agreement with a set of doctrines or a momentary pause in desire, but a holistic sense of belonging, purpose, and resolution that encompassed his mind, emotions, and will. It provides a powerful and definitive answer to that initial question posed at the very beginning of the Confessions of the human heart's innate restlessness. For Augustine, true rest was found not in worldly achievement or pleasure, but in aligning his will and his entire being with something he perceived as ultimate truth and the source of his very existence. He found not just an answer, but an ultimate destination for his soul.
So after hearing this incredible journey, you might still wonder, why should you read Confessions today? Why does a book written over 1,600 years ago, chronicling the spiritual struggles of a 4th century Roman intellectual, still matter to us now? In our hyper-connected, fast-paced, often secular 21st century?
It's a fair question.
It's a valid question, considering the vast amount of new literature, information, digital content available. What can this ancient text offer us in a world that seems so vastly different from Augustine's?
That's a crucial inquiry, and it points to the enduring genius of the work. How does a deeply personal, ancient spiritual autobiography transcend its specific historical and cultural context to become this universal text that resonates across millennia?
How does it do that?
It's because Augustine wasn't just writing about the specific events of his life. He was dissecting the very essence of human longing, the universal struggle with temptation, intellectual pride, existential doubt, and the relentless search for profound and lasting meaning. He was an incredibly articulate chronicler of the inner human landscape.
Right.
And those internal landscapes fundamentally haven't changed all that much. He speaks to something core to the human experience that remains true regardless of technological advancement, societal shifts, or cultural norms. The external scenery may change, but the internal drama often remains eerily similar.
Our source makes it clear, and it's a vital point. Because it's not just about one man's past. It's about the universal human experience, our longing, our flaws, our hidden battles, and our desperate hope for meaning.
That sums it up beautifully.
Augustine lays bare what it truly means to be human, not in some idealized, sanitized form, but in all its messy, contradictory, and often painful reality. He confronts his own shortcomings, his intellectual arrogance, his powerful sensuality, his profound search for truth with an unflinching honesty that is almost shocking.
He doesn't hold back.
No, he doesn't sugarcoat his past. He excavates it for profound understanding.
This is precisely where the book's power truly lies, and why it continues to be studied and cherished by philosophers, theologians, psychologists, and just general readers alike. Augustine's unflinching honesty about his struggles with desire, intellectual pride, the painful journey through doubt, his persistent search for lasting joy, it speaks directly to fundamental aspects of the human condition that remain unchanged across millennia.
Timeless struggles.
Absolutely. While the external forms of our struggles may differ, maybe we're not stealing pears, but endlessly scrolling on social media seeking validation or succumbing to instant gratification, the internal battles often do not.
Same core issues.
Yeah, the yearning for significance, the temptation to seek fulfillment in fleeting pleasures, the internal division between what we know is right and what we desire in the moment. These are timeless aspects of human existence that Augustine articulates with unparalleled clarity and insight. He gives us a language for our own internal chaos.
It's also important to remember that this work is one of the very first books where someone dares to tell the full truth about their life. Not to impress, not to present some curated image of perfection, but genuinely, brutally to confess.
That act of confession is revolutionary.
He reveals his vulnerabilities, his darkest thoughts, his petty jealousies, his moments of profound despair, alongside his intellectual triumphs. This level of raw, introspective honesty, this deep psychological self-analysis, was revolutionary for its time. It broke entirely from autobiographical traditions that often focused exclusively on public achievements or, virtuous self-portraits.
Polished resumes, essentially.
Exactly. And frankly, it still feels revolutionary today, doesn't it? In an age where so much of our public-facing lives are meticulously edited, filtered, carefully constructed for external validation.
The Instagram version of life.
Right. It's a powerful antidote to our modern curated selves.
What's fascinating here is precisely the genre-defining nature of confessions.
Right.
Prior to this work, as you said, autobiographical accounts tended to be more focused on external events, public achievements, presenting a virtuous example. Augustine's audacious willingness to expose his inner vulnerabilities, his doubts, his intellectual arrogance, his love of ruin, it created a new literary and psychological precedent for genuine self-revelation.
It opened a door.
It really did.
Yeah.
And it raises an important question for us, even today. What does it take for us in our own lives to truly confess our inner lives? Not to impress others, not for external validation, but for genuine self-understanding and potentially for profound transformation. It requires profound courage, doesn't it? To look inward with unflinching honesty and acknowledge the full spectrum of our human experience, the good, the bad, and the deeply uncomfortable, just as Augustine did. It asks us to confront our authentic selves.
So if you've ever felt torn between who you are in this moment and who you desperately want to be, if you felt that persistent inner ache for something more, that restless searching for a deeper meaning that the world just isn't providing, then this book will feel less like an ancient text and maybe more like looking in a mirror. Augustine's journey in its raw, uncompromising honesty invites us to examine our own lives, our own desires, our own paths to fulfillment.
It holds up a mirror, absolutely.
It prompts us to ask ourselves, where are our restless hearts seeking rest? Are we looking in the right places? Or are we, maybe like young Augustine, chasing fleeting satisfactions that ultimately leave us even more empty?
That connection to the listener is absolutely key. Confessions isn't prescriptive in the sense of providing like a step-by-step manual for faith or personal growth.
No easy answers.
No. Rather, it's descriptive of a deeply human journey. It provides this rich framework for understanding our own inner conflicts and aspirations by seeing them reflected in Augustine's experience. This powerfully underscores the enduring value of engaging with classic texts. They don't just teach us about the past or about historical figures, they illuminate our present selves. They offer timeless insights into the human condition that transcend the specific era in which they were written.
Yeah.
It's a profound testament to the continuity and shared nature of human experience across time, inviting us to find our own story within his. Hashtag outro.
Well, this deep dive into St. Augustine's Confessions has been, for me at least, a powerful reminder that the search for meaning, the internal battles we face against our desires and our own divided wills, and the hope for ultimate resolution, these are truly timeless aspects of the human condition.
They really are.
His journey from profound restlessness and intellectual striving to discovered sense of rest and spiritual surrender is just a testament to the transformative power of rigorous self-reflection, persistent searching, and for him certainly a profound act of faith. It's a journey that, in countless ways, continues to echo within our own lives.
And that leads to, I think, an important question for you, the listener, to consider. In your own life, what does it mean to find rest for that restless heart?
What does that look like for you?
Is it a definitive state of being, achieved at a single moment? Is it an ongoing process of aligning with your deepest values and purpose? Is it a surrender to something greater than yourself? Or perhaps something else entirely that evolves as you do through different seasons of life?
It's a big question.
It is. This ancient query continues to resonate, inviting all of us to look inward and seek our own authentic answers.
We hope this deep dive has offered you some new insights into this monumental work and perhaps even inspired you to delve into Augustine's Confessions yourself, to discover its profound and maybe surprising relevance for your own journey. Keep exploring, keep reflecting, and as always, stay curious.